everyone! I'm going to show you how to make touchscreen gloves. So if you've ever tried to use a touchscreen like a smartphone or something with gloves on, you might have noticed that it doesn't quite work. That's because some touchscreens use our skin's natural conductive powers. Well, what does that mean, conductive? Well, a conductor is something that allows electricity to flow through it. And an insulator is something that stops the flow of electricity. So our skin is conductive. It allows electricity to flow through it, a very small amount. But if we put the gloves on, the gloves are an insulator and they stop the flow of electricity, so the touchscreen won't work. To solve this problem, we can use some conductive thread. So conductive thread is just what it sounds like. It's a thread which conducts electricity. So the gloves by themselves are not going to conduct electricity. They're an insulator. But if we sew in some conductive thread into the fingertips, the conductive thread will make contact with our finger and allow a small amount of electricity to pass between the phone and our fingertips. So to make our touchscreen gloves, you're going to want some gloves. I've got these are kind of knit gloves, and I think they're made out of cotton, so they're going to be pretty easy to sew into, but you might have another pair of gloves that could work too. Then you're going to want your conductive thread. You're going to need a needle. I've got a big plastic needle that I'm going to use. And then you also want some scissors. And you'll want a touchscreen of some kind, like a smartphone or something, so that you can try your gloves out and see if they work. All right, let's get started making our touchscreen gloves. So the first thing we can do is cut off a length of conductive thread to work with. I've got a piece here that's maybe about a foot long, and I think that'll be pretty good to get us started. So now we can get this onto our needle. I've got this kind of larger plastic needle, so it's got a larger eye, and it'll be easier to thread this through. But I'll just get that threaded and then tie a couple of knots to get it to stay on there. Okay, so I've got my needle and my thread. Now I'm gonna get a glove. I'm gonna start with the glove for my left hand, even though that's not my dominant hand. I probably use my right hand more on my touchscreen, but this will be easier for me to demonstrate how to do it. And I'm gonna start sewing onto my index finger, because that's probably the finger I use the most with the touchscreen. But you might want to do something different. I'm gonna show you one way how to sew the conductive thread onto the finger, but there's lots of different ways you could do it, like different patterns. I'm just gonna kind of like work back and forth, and I'm not gonna be super exact, because really just the important thing is that we make a nice connection between our skin and the conductive thread, and there's enough conductive thread exposed here on the top that it makes a good connection on the touchscreen. So you don't have to be super exact, you just wanna make sure there's enough sticking out here and enough inside the glove that you make that good connection. Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna stick this needle through the glove, and I'm gonna get it to poke out at the very tip of this first finger. Okay, and I think that'll work. And then I'm gonna pull the thread through so there's maybe a couple inches sticking out left in the finger, and that's what's gonna help to make that connection with our skin. So I pulled it through so there's a little bit sticking out inside the glove, and I'm gonna get started sewing. You'll notice I'm gonna sew with the glove actually on my finger, And this will be helpful because it'll make it so that I don't accidentally sew the finger shut, where I accidentally sew both sides together. I also have like this plastic needle, so I'm not worried about poking myself. You don't have to do it this way, but this is the way I'm gonna do it. All right, and now I'm gonna get started just kind of sewing rows back and forth. Okay, and when you get to the end where you've just got a little bit of thread left, you can do kind of like what we did at the beginning and just pass the needle through inside the glove, and then you can kind of slip the glove off and pull the needle through so that last thread gets pulled through. And we've got a decent amount of thread worked in there. You can see it's not very pretty, but I think it'll do the trick. And then if you slip the glove off, and you can kind of pull that thread through and get your scissors and just cut that off. So you'll see there's some thread hanging out inside the hole for the finger, and then you pop your glove back out. Let's take a look. So I think there's a decent amount of thread exposed there. You know, if I had started with a longer piece, I could get more thread in there, so that's something you might try too. You could try a different pattern. You could try to make yours really neat. Mine's not super neat, but I think it'll work. So let's try it out with a touchscreen now and see if it works. So I'm gonna slip the glove back on, and I'm gonna get a touchscreen ready. Okay, so I've got a screen here, and let's see, let's try it out with a finger that I didn't sew the conductive thread onto. So if I try to draw, obviously nothing's happening, but if I get that index finger with the thread, I can draw, it's working. So that seemed to work pretty well. I think I got pretty good placement on the finger. That's one thing to mess around with. You know, you could try to get it on the very tip of the finger, the conductive thread, because that's probably the part that you use most on the touch screen versus like the pad of your finger. But that's just something to play around with. And then of course you can do the same exact thing with any other fingers that you want to be able to use with your touch screen, like your thumb or your middle finger or ring finger or pinky. It's just the same idea. Like I said, it doesn't have to be super exact. You could use whatever pattern you want to use, as long as you get enough of that conductive thread exposed and you leave a little bit hanging inside the glove. It's gonna make that nice connection, just like we saw. Thanks for watching. Good luck with your touchscreen gloves.